Hollywood built its empire on a beautiful lie. That fame was the ultimate reward, the glittering prize at the end of every struggling actor's journey. The studio system manufactured gods and goddesses, faces projected 40 feet high, names written in lights. But what the cameras never captured was the cost of that immortality, the slow suffocation that came with being worshipped, the erasure of self beneath layers of grease paint and myth. In the Golden Age, fame wasn't just exposure, it was ownership. MGM, Warner Brothers, Paramount, they didn't just employ their stars, they possessed them. Every smile was rehearsed, every interview scripted, every romance arranged or forbidden by men in suits who understood that mystery sold tickets, but control sold careers. The contract players were beautiful prisoners, and the studio lots were gilded cages where privacy went to die. For most, this was the bargain they'd made. But for a rare few, fame became something darker than disappointment. It became unbearable. These weren't divas throwing tantrums or stars complaining about the burden of wealth. These were artists who discovered that in becoming icons, they'd lost the very thing that made them human, the right to exist unseen, unjudged, unowned. Some retreated into silence. Others fled to foreign countries. A few self-destructed slowly, their private agonies becoming public spectacle. But all of them understood the same terrible truth, that Hollywood's spotlight doesn't just illuminate, it incinerates. It turns flesh and blood into celluloid, transforms living souls into myths that must be maintained long after the person inside has died. Tonight, we look at 10 legends who learned that in Hollywood, the spotlight can burn as much as it shines. Greta Garbo, the woman who vanished. She slipped through the crowd like smoke through fingers, a ghost in sunglasses walking the autumn pathways of Central Park, anonymous at last among the living. Greta Garbo arrived in Hollywood as a Swedish enigma, transformed by MGM into their most luminous mystery. Through Grand Hotel, Queen Christina Camille, she became the face that launched 1,000 imitating sighs, the actress whose beauty seemed too perfect to be entirely real. But the studio's grip was suffocating. Every moment choreographed, every public appearance a performance she never auditioned for. At 36, after the failure of Two-Faced Woman in 1941, she simply walked away from the screen. No farewell tour, no final interview, no explanation. She vanished as completely as a character when the projector stops. For the next 50 years, Garbo lived in Manhattan's Campanile Apartments, a recluse in plain sight. She shopped alone, refused all interviews, avoided every premiere. When journalists tracked her down, she'd pull her collar high and hurry past, guarding her face like a secret no one had earned the right to know. The line from Grand Hotel, "I want to be alone," had become her curse, forever misquoted, forever following her. In 1955, she told Life magazine with weary precision, "I never said, I want to be alone. I said, I want to be left alone." But Hollywood never understood the difference. She died in 1990, having successfully done what no other star ever managed. She disappeared while the world was still watching, proving that the ultimate rebellion isn't burning out, it's simply refusing to be seen. Marlon Brando, fame as prison. "Fame is a jail," he told Rolling Stone in 1976, and he meant it with every molecule of rage in his massive frame. Marlon Brando arrived like a revolution, a streetcar named Desire, on the waterfront, the Wild One, bringing a raw, dangerous honesty that made every other actor look like they were acting. But the press wanted more than his performances. They wanted his soul dissected in print, his marriages chronicled, his weight discussed, his opinions packaged for consumption. Brando responded with pure, magnificent contempt. He sabotaged interviews, hung up on journalists mid-sentence, showed up to press conferences in bathrobes, or refused to show up at all. When he won his second Oscar for The Godfather in 1973, he sent Native American activist Sachin Little Feather to refuse the award on television, turning Hollywood's most sacred moment into a political protest the industry would never forgive. The more they wanted him, the further he retreated. He bought Tetiaroa, a private atoll in Tahiti, and disappeared into its blue silence for months at a time. In his final years, he became a recluse, giving interviews only by phone, his voice a disembodied rumble discussing philosophy and Native American rights while refusing to discuss himself. He understood what most stars never grasped, that fame doesn't make you more real, it makes you less. It reduces complexity to sound bites, transforms human beings into commodities that must perform their personalities on demand. When he died in 2004, Hollywood mourned a genius. But Brando would have called it something else, the end of a life sentence, finally served. Ingrid Bergman, from idol to exile. "I've gone from saint to whore and back to saint again," she said, her voice carrying the weight of a woman who'd learned that Hollywood's love was as conditional as a studio contract. Ingrid Bergman was America's angel, pure, luminous, morally unimpeachable. After Casablanca, she became the face of wartime virtue, the woman whose integrity seemed to glow from within. The studio crafted her image carefully. Devoted wife, loving mother, the actress whose private life matched her radiant screen persona. But in 1949, she fell in love with Italian director Roberto Rossellini while still married, became pregnant, and watched as her American dream collapsed into a nightmare of public condemnation. The U.S. Senate denounced her from the floor. Newspapers called her a homewrecker. Fan letters turned to hate mail overnight. Bergman fled to Europe, exiled for 7 years, discovering that fame's pedestal was also a trap. She'd been made into an icon, and icons aren't allowed to be human. They can't fall in love at the wrong time, can't make mistakes, can't deviate from the manufactured perfection that made them valuable in the first place. She told friends that fame had made her a prisoner of my image, locked inside a role she never wanted to play. The perfect woman, the moral exemplar, the saint who must never sin. When she returned to Hollywood in 1957 to win the Oscar for Anastasia, America forgave her. But Bergman never forgot what she'd learned about adoration, that it's just another form of control. Love with surveillance built in, and the higher they place you, the further you have to fall. Montgomery Clift, the self-destructive icon. "The closer I get to being a star," he once confessed, "the less I become myself." Montgomery Clift arrived in Hollywood with a face like a Renaissance painting and the soul of a poet who'd wandered onto the wrong stage. A place in the sun, from here to eternity, he brought a wounded sensitivity to roles that made vulnerability look like courage. But fame terrified him. The attention, the scrutiny, the constant invasion of privacy by fans and press who wanted to know everything about the beautiful, tortured man behind the performances. He was gay in an era when that secret could destroy a career, sensitive in an industry that rewarded machismo, private in a profession that demanded public consumption. Then came the night in 1956 when his car wrapped around a telephone pole, shattering his face and whatever fragile protection anonymity had once offered. The cameras that captured him afterward were merciless. Every scar documented, every painful public appearance analyzed, every role now filtered through the tragedy of his ruined beauty. Friends would later call the decade that followed the longest suicide in Hollywood history. He drowned himself in alcohol and painkillers, avoided premieres, withdrew from the press, turned his famous face away from the flashbulbs that wanted to capture his decline. He died in 1966 at 45, alone in his Manhattan townhouse, the man he'd been already long gone beneath the wreckage of what fame had made him. His legacy isn't just the performances, it's the reminder that some souls are too delicate for worship, and that the cameras don't care whether you survive their attention. Ava Gardner, the exile in Spain. "Hollywood is the world's biggest madhouse," she declared, and then she proved her sanity by leaving it behind. Ava Gardner was MGM's ultimate creation, a barefoot North Carolina farm girl sculpted into a goddess, the face that defined sultry, the woman men fought over in headlines and gossip columns. 3 famous marriages, Mickey Rooney, Artie Shaw, Frank Sinatra, gave the press endless material, and Gardner gave them nothing but contempt in return. "I have the face of a goddess and the soul of a truck driver," she'd say, dismissing the beauty that had made her famous as an accident of genetics she'd never asked for. What she'd wanted was to act. What she got was paparazzi camping outside her door, journalists rifling through her garbage, and a public that cared more about her love life than her work. In 1955, she made her escape. Spain became her refuge, a country where she could drink wine in outdoor cafes without flashbulbs exploding, where her face meant nothing to the old men playing dominoes in sun-drenched plazas. She lived in Madrid, then London, granting rare interviews where she spoke with the weary honesty of someone who'd survived a war. She drank heavily, bourbon straight, no apologies, and when the drinking caught up with her, she retreated further, protecting what little privacy fame had left her. When she died in 1990, the obituaries remembered the beauty and the marriages. But Gardner's real story was the quiet heroism of a woman who understood that sometimes the only way to win is to leave the game entirely, to trade stardom for something Hollywood could never manufacture. A life lived on her own terms, far from the madhouse lights. James Dean, the reluctant legend. "I want to be great, not famous," he told friends, but Hollywood gave him immortality instead, the cruelest gift of all. James Dean burned through cinema like a match, 3 films, 24 years, and a legacy that would outlive every actor who worked longer and wanted fame more. After East of Eden exploded, the hysteria began. Teenage girls mobbing him on streets, press demanding his thoughts on everything from method acting to his favorite color, studios packaging his rebellion into a product they could sell. Dean recoiled. He'd wanted to be an artist, to disappear inside roles the way Clift and Brando did. What he got was something closer to being hunted. "Fame feels like being prey," he confessed to Eartha Kitt, and in the tightness around his eyes in late photographs, you can see him feeling the trap closing. He escaped into his Porsche, racing along California highways at speeds that must have felt like the only freedom left, movement so fast that maybe the cameras couldn't follow. On September 30th, 1955, that freedom killed him on a rural intersection, his silver Spider crumpled like tin foil, his face gone before the world could watch it age. But death didn't free him. It made him eternal. The irony would have destroyed him, that the fame he feared became infinite the moment he died, that his face would be reproduced on posters and t-shirts and dorm room walls for decades, that he'd become the very thing he'd wanted to escape. Not a person, but a symbol, forever young, forever misunderstood, forever trapped at the intersection of art and celebrity. He wanted greatness. History gave him mythology instead, and proved that sometimes the price of becoming a legend is never getting to live long enough to be simply human. Kim Novak, the vanishing star. "They told me what to wear, how to smile, what to say," she remembered years later, her voice still carrying the exhaustion of someone who'd lost herself inside a stranger's reflection. "I lost myself completely." Kim Novak was Columbia's answer to Marilyn Monroe, another blonde goddess manufactured in Hollywood's image factory, sculpted and marketed and controlled down to the color of her lipstick. She starred in Vertigo, Picnic, Pal Joey, but she was never allowed to be Kim Novak. The studio dictated everything. Her hair color, bleached platinum. Her name, born Marilyn Pauline Novak, even her romantic partners for publicity photographs. She was a product, not a person, and the woman inside the image slowly began to fracture under the pressure of maintaining a self that wasn't hers. The panic attacks started early. Then the breakdowns. Anxiety, so severe she couldn't leave her dressing room, couldn't face the cameras that were stealing pieces of her soul one frame at a time. The studio doctors prescribed pills. The studio executives demanded she smile. By 1966, Novak couldn't do either anymore. She walked away from Hollywood at the height of her fame, retreating to Oregon to paint and raise horses and slowly reconstruct the person she'd been before the image consumed her. In later interviews, she discussed bipolar disorder, the long journey back to sanity, the price of beauty in an industry that treats women as inventory. She made occasional returns to acting, but always on her terms, always with an escape route planned. Hollywood had taught her that the spotlight doesn't reveal who you are, it erases you, replacing flesh and blood with projected light, and the only way to survive is to step out of the beam before there's nothing left but the ghost of someone else's fantasy. Burt Lancaster, the private intellectual. "I'm an actor, not a personality," he'd say flatly, refusing to perform himself for audiences who wanted star quality instead of craft. Burt Lancaster possessed the kind of masculine beauty that should have made him Hollywood's most willing participant in the fame machine. The physique, the smile, the swashbuckling roles in From Here to Eternity and The Crimson Pirate. But beneath the leading man exterior lived a serious artist and political thinker who treated celebrity with cool disdain. He avoided interviews like Quarantine, refused to appear on gossip programs, and made it clear that his private life was precisely that, private. When forced to speak to press, he discussed the work, the craft of acting, the politics of filmmaking, but deflect every question about himself with the polite indifference of a man who decided his personality wasn't for public consumption. Lancaster used his leverage differently than most stars. He formed his own production company and pursued serious, challenging work. Sweet Smell of Success, Elmer Gantry, the Birdman of Alcatraz. He involved himself in progressive politics, showing up for causes while refusing to make his personal life into entertainment. When gossip columnists tried to probe his marriages or friendships, they met a wall of principled silence. To Lancaster, fame was a distraction from what mattered. The work itself, the stories that needed telling, the roles that challenged rather than confirmed. He died in 1994, remembered primarily for his performances rather than his personality. exactly as he'd wanted. His rebellion against fame wasn't loud or self-destructive. It was the quiet refusal of a craftsman who understood that not everything about yourself needs to be sold, and that sometimes the most radical act is simply saying no to exposure without apology or explanation. Katharine Hepburn, the uncompromising individualist. "I don't care what people say about me," she announced to anyone who'd listen, and spent 7 decades proving she meant it. Katharine Hepburn arrived in Hollywood with a Bryn Mawr accent and the unshakable conviction that her private life was nobody's business but her own. While other actresses posed for glamour shots and granted intimate interviews, Hepburn wore trousers, refused makeup artists, and told studio publicists where they could put their carefully crafted image campaigns. The press labeled her box office poison in 1938, expecting her to soften, to conform, to beg for forgiveness. Instead, she retreated to the stage, returning to Hollywood only when she could do it on her terms. No publicity tours, no gossip column cooperation, no performance of femininity for cameras that wanted to reduce her to decoration. She lived between 2 worlds, Hollywood for work, Connecticut for life, and made it clear which one mattered. She avoided premieres, granted interviews only when contractually obligated, and spent those reluctant conversations refusing to discuss anything personal. Her decades-long relationship with Spencer Tracy remained private not through careful image management, but through sheer force of will. She simply wouldn't talk about it, and her refusal became a kind of armor that even the most persistent journalists couldn't penetrate. Hepburn didn't hate fame. She mastered it by refusing to be mastered by it. She took what she wanted from Hollywood, roles, money, creative control, and discarded the rest like ill-fitting costumes. When she died in 2003 at 96, she'd proven something revolutionary, that you could be one of cinema's greatest stars while remaining fundamentally unknowable, that privacy wasn't something you had to sacrifice for success, and that the most powerful rebellion isn't destruction, it's indifference. Marlene Dietrich, trapped by perfection. "I dress for the image," she explained with the precision of someone describing a prison sentence. "Not for myself, not for the public, not for fashion, for the image." Marlene Dietrich was a masterpiece, and masterpieces must be maintained. From The Blue Angel through Morocco, Shanghai Express, witness for the prosecution, she created herself with the meticulous control of a sculptor working in flesh and light. Every angle calculated, every photograph approved, every public appearance a carefully staged performance of the Dietrich myth. Director Joseph von Sternberg had shown her how to use light and shadow to create magic, and she'd learned the lesson too well, that perfection on screen required absolute control of it, that the image must never crack, that the legend could never be caught looking ordinary. The obsession consumed her. She dictated camera angles, approved lighting setups, controlled costume fittings down to the millimeter. As she aged, the control intensified, more makeup, more precise lighting, more careful staging of every public moment. The woman inside the image disappeared entirely, replaced by a hologram that must be projected flawlessly or not at all. In her final years, Dietrich became a recluse in her Paris apartment, granting interviews only by telephone, her voice disembodied, the image finally abandoned because it could no longer be maintained. Depression and isolation became her companions, the price of a lifetime spent being perfect for cameras that never stopped watching. She died in 1992, and what remained was the image, the photographs, the films, the perfectly controlled performances. But somewhere beneath those layers of myth and makeup had lived a woman who'd imprisoned herself inside her own reflection, who'd learned that perfection is its own kind of cage, and that when you spend a lifetime being looked at, you eventually forget how to simply live, unseen and gloriously imperfect, in the merciful dark. The paradox of fame has remained unchanged since the first frame of film flickered across a screen. It promises immortality, but steals peace, offers adoration while demanding surrender, lights you up like a beacon while burning away everything that made you worth illuminating in the first place. These 10 stars weren't ungrateful. They weren't spoiled or naive or unaware of their privilege. They were simply trapped between 2 irreconcilable truths, that they'd chosen a profession that required exposure, and that exposure, unrelenting and total, eventually becomes a kind of death. Art demands vulnerability. Fame demands performance. And somewhere in the collision between those 2 requirements, the authentic self gets crushed into something that exists only for other people's consumption. A face without interiority, a personality without privacy, a soul that belongs to everyone except the person living inside it. What makes their stories resonate isn't the luxury of their suffering, it's the universality of it. Anyone who's ever felt seen in ways they didn't choose, judged by strangers who mistake knowledge for intimacy, reduced to a version of themselves that exists primarily in other people's imaginations, understands what these stars were running from. The difference is that for them, there was no escape. Their faces were too famous, their names too recognizable, their images too thoroughly owned by a public that believed love gave them the right to possess. And yet their refusals became their ultimate power. By retreating, by vanishing, by saying no to the machinery of celebrity, they inadvertently created the one thing Hollywood can never manufacture: genuine mystery. Garbo's silence made her more legendary than any interview could have. Brando's contempt became part of his myth. Their absences proved more compelling than any carefully managed presence, reminding us that what we can't have, can't see, can't fully know will always fascinate us more than what's offered freely. In the end, they came to Hollywood to be seen, artists seeking the opportunity to share their gift with the world, to transform into other people's stories, to disappear in side roles that would outlive them. But somewhere in the blinding glare of success, they discovered the terrible truth, that the cameras never stopped rolling, that the performance of self never ended, that fame didn't want their art. It wanted them, consumed wholesale, until there was nothing left but the projected image flickering on a screen. They came to Hollywood to be seen, but in the end, all they wanted was to disappear.